Actually, why don't we start with One Love? Because I know that I know that it's out there. I know it was being made. The guy who's the guy that plays the main character?
Benadir or something.
It
Benadir. Yeah,
it
Ben
is
Kingsley or Kingsley
Ben
Kingsley
Kingsley
Benadir.
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 Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
British actor. I honestly had seen his face before, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I guess
Barbie.
Barbie, right? He
He
was
was in
in
Barbie.
Barbie.
hmm
Yeah, but he was also in this a Marvel show called
Secret Wars or Secret Invasion.
Secret Invasion, and then he was also in One Night in Miami, and he played Malcolm X uh, with a ensemble cast, but it was directed by Regina King. That was on Netflix. That was the first time I saw him. But
Looks
yeah,
like he might have also been in my making this up. It's showing up as Peaky Blinders too.
I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah,
doubt
it
it.
makes sense to me. I don't know for sure.
But yeah, he's got like an interesting
He's
resume.
rising.
Yeah, he's definitely
Yeah.
rising. So I thought it was apropos for me to see this. Well, I went to Jamaica back in February and I had been wanting to see it. And I think it came out like the weekend I left to go there. And it's been on my list for a while. And then finally I saw about like a day or two ago that it was coming to Showtime, Paramount Plus, which I am currently a subscriber of. So I wanted to watch. That was my evening Saturday night watch, and yeah, it was interesting to learn about his life and really his sole purpose. Because I mean, as a '90s baby, I mean, that he's a large figure and major influencer in Jamaican culture. And I just wanted to know more about him. And this movie really goes through his influence and just even the political chaos going on at that time. I had no idea the history of Jamaica and how they gained their independence just a few years prior to when it takes place in 1976. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the history of Jamaica, they gained their independence, I believe, in like early mid 70s from the United Kingdom. They're an independent nation. And when you think things would calm down, they don't. Two major political parties rise up and it causes a civil war in the country. And in many respects, Bob Marley is sort of like that calming presence that just wants people to live and enjoy their lives. And he tries to bring the world together in the form of music. And it gave me some sort of like allusion to like what um, the Beatles did and their influence during like a very politically I guess, tumultuous time in the world and such. So I definitely saw a lot of similarities between him and John Lennon and just his role. And then I didn't know that his wife was a backup dancer from when he first started. Her name is Rita. She's still alive. And then they show what's been going on in the country itself of Jamaica and just how he's a very prominent figure and he's rising with his music. And the whole movie revolves around just him trying to put together this peace sort of performance in Jamaica to bring everyone together for a greater cause. And like a lot of other, music concerts in like the 70s, the 80s, they had with Freddie Mercury and Queen, they went to Live Aid. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. It just gave this type of similar sentiment, and he's really gung ho about it. And a lot of his um, just people in his group are telling him, "Is this really a good idea to do this?" And he's really just like gung ho, like, "No, this is like what we need now more than ever, given what's going on in our country." So he pursues this, and then uh, yeah, it goes into like a little bit of his childhood too, how his father was white, his mother was black. He was raised by his mother. His father was like in his 60s and I guess had an affair with his mother or something along those lines. His father is Jamaican born with, uh, I guess, UK origins and such. And his father passed away when he was very young and apparently didn't treat his mother very well. And he was brought up mostly by his mother. And that's when he learned to play. And they show like flashbacks of when he started just developing and leaning towards music as like his way of coping with just his childhood and such. And just, it was a very beautiful story of how he takes music and really just shares it with the world to really help I don't want to say distract, but just more as like a way of coping with external problems and being able to come together. So I thought it was a really nice story in general, but also you learn a lot about Jamaica and just its history as well.
That's cool.
Do you
Yeah.
recommend?
I do recommend it. I mean, I had no idea about their history at all. And I mean, just growing up, everyone knows One Love, right? But you don't really know the origins of the story. You don't really of that song, or even just his album, is it album Exodus, and how it blew up and how it became, I think they said like one of the best albums of the 20th century or something to that extent they were talking about, and how his tour went across the world. Like they showed him throughout the US, they showed him performing the songs from Exodus out in Europe. And yeah, I think it's definitely worth seeing. I mean, he was such a prominent figure in the 70s, and then I didn't even know how he died. Do you both know how he passed?
I think it
No.
was like cancer or something.
Yeah, melanoma.
Yeah.
They found it on his toe, and they show him playing soccer throughout the film. And apparently his father had melanoma, but obviously, as we know now, like technology has improved significantly. They thought initially it was just like an injury he had gotten from playing soccer. And then after it was a little too late, this thing started spreading and it ended up becoming, more dangerous and spreading throughout his body. And he unfortunately passed away, I believe in the 80s.
How old was he?
I want to say mid late 30s.
Yeah, it's young.
Yeah, I don't recall him
Yeah.
being particularly old when he.
No, 36 years old, 1981.
Yeah.
So,
Is it?
but
I mean, is it a relative? I mean, obviously he dies and he goes through a bunch of stuff, but like, is it a relatively lighthearted story? Like, is his story, or is it darker?
it's a combination. I think he really makes light of a really horrible time in their history. You see civil war happening. The beginning of the film, there are people that come in with guns and start shooting at him and his friends. And, they're not involved in this political um, turmoil. They just want to live their lives peacefully. And now that they gained their independence, they were, I believe, hoping that was the case. And then people from both sides of these political parties, unfortunately, start committing crimes. And it's not a safe, happy place like he wants it to be, where he wants to raise his children and such. And he lives on like a gated property and everything. And you see two men come into his home and shoot his friend. They shoot his wife in the head and she almost dies. And luckily her dreadlocks, I guess, saved her to some extent from getting a full wound to the brain.
That's crazy.
So
I'm gonna grow out my hair
yeah,
now.
yeah. So um yeah, and I was looking it up. I was like, did she die? Because just the way that like she was shot, you would think, oh, she's gone. And I look on my phone before everything, like, oh, she's still alive. She clearly was able to dodge that bullet, nonetheless. But yeah, it was an interesting story. I didn't know much about him. I honestly just knew about his songs and just, I guess, how lighthearted of a person he was. And I believe he had like very religious roots too. And I was like reading up on it as well. And I think there's a lot of religion that sort of helps support not only his music, but just his ideology and just how he carries himself, his approach to life. So yeah, I think it's worth the watch. I'm always fascinated by these, biographical films, and uh, you know, I don't know how, accurate everything is, but his children were involved in
Hmm.
production, and one of the main producers also was Brad Pitt.
Okay.
So
And you said that's on Paramount Plus, Showtime.
Paramount Plus, Showtime.
Okay.
So I'm assuming if his children had some involvement with it, I would assume they wanted to make it as accurate as possible. But yeah, I liked it a lot. And it's interesting. They really made Kingsley Ben-Adir look a lot like him. If you look at photos, it's pretty close. They did a great job.
That's good.
hmm
Cool.
So
Yeah, I'll have to try and remember to check that out.
yeah, it's a
I
short film. I
is it like a 90-minute kind of thing?
I think it was an hour 50 tops. It was
Okay.
it was an easy watch.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I remember seeing the trailer for it, and I was at least curious about it. I
Hmm.
I have enjoyed the Bob Marley songs that I know, which is to say the ones that
Right.
everybody knows. And I'm not overly familiar with him, so it'll be it'd be really interesting to learn more about him because he was, you know, even without knowing a lot about him, I know that he was an important figure in kind of world history, really,
Yeah.
even though he wasn't necessarily a politician or anything like that. Like he was kind of a big deal. So,
Right. And I didn't realize why. I was like, why is this guy such a big figure and such an icon, not just in Jamaica, but outside of it? And it makes sense with everything that politically was going on in their country at the time, why he was such a, you know, an icon once he not only just releasing his music, but what he really meant to Jamaicans. And even just by going to Jamaica, everyone references him.
mhm.
I mean, the guy's been gone for like 40 something years, right? Now, or not 40, sorry, 30 some, no, yeah, 40 years, 40 something years now. And he, people still, quote him and I mean, play his songs. When I went to Jamaica 2 months ago, they had a Jamaican themed show, and a lot of it was just featuring his songs. Like it's almost like he is Jamaica to some
Right.
extent. So it's just knowing, um, really his importance and really how he made such a great influence on his country and still does years later. So definitely give it a watch. You learn a little bit more about Jamaican history. You learn, about him as a musician and really as an influence.
I know Showtime's going away. Apparently, it's being sunset, so it's now
Yeah.
be folded into Paramount Plus. And then I know there was also like a bit of a hubbub over Kingsley Ben-Adir not being Jamaican, but it was like we really tried to find someone who's Jamaican, but like he fit the part. Let's just roll with it. Because I know sometimes they'll want kind of like even with Shogun, like one actor wanted to make sure that if we're gonna portray Japanese people, let's use Japanese actors.
Yeah.
But it sounds like he kicked ass. So that's cool.
I thought he did a great job and they they made him look like him. He sounded like he could have been him too. Just yeah, I think they did a good job.
Sweet.
Cool. Yeah, yeah, I'm curious about it for sure. So, okay. Well, with that, have you guys ever watched or seen, do you remember the movie? I think it was Matt Damon, The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Huh.
We yes,
Um,
we talked about this when we were
Talking about that
Saltburn.
Saltburn.
Yeah,
okay,
there
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And how
I haven't
the
seen it, but I've heard it's the same kind of weirdo situation.
sort of, yeah.
Yeah, sort of.
And so the story has been out there for a while. I think it's actually based on a book, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Hmm.
And so Netflix just put out Ripley on,
Ripley.
and it's in black and white. It's 8 episodes, and it feels like probably a more grounded telling of the story. And Ripley himself is less suave, I guess, less, less experienced, I think, in the game that he plays in this. I don't know if there's plans for another season or not. I'm only about halfway through the first season. What I can say is it's a very beautiful show. Like it's all done in black and white. It's shot in, I don't know if it's shot in Italy or if they just had great sets or whatever. I mean, it feels like it's directly in Italy. And it's really, really pretty. The biggest issue that I have with it is it's just really, really slow. It takes a long time building up to the things that it's building up to. I think it's good, and the character things that they're building are really good. It would just be nice to see them develop faster. When because I think it takes a long time, even in the first episode, to get to like your first kind of real twist. It's really interesting, and all of a sudden it makes the rest of the show like you really want to watch the rest of the show. But getting there over the course of an hour, it was just slow. Like it's so many long shots and so many shots of just people kind of moving around in this beautiful space, and they're really taking advantage of the scenery and all that. And I think this is another show that probably would have benefited from being 6 episodes and cutting out 2 hours of visual like beauty to make it something that's just a little more exciting. Because it's definitely not exciting. It's definitely not the word for it, but it's smart. Dakota Fanning's in it, and she's great. She doesn't really kind of take a bite out of the show for a few episodes. Like she's kind of there, but you don't really get a lot of her. Uh, but her and Adam, no, what's his name? The guy from Fleabag,
Andrew
and
Scott.
Andrew Scott. He's Ripley. And so I saw that on set, their characters don't like each other on the show. So, they stayed not quite in character, but they gave each other a lot of shit, even when they weren't filming. They really like each other, but they played into that, and you can tell like there's a genuine, you can feel the disdain between these two characters as you watch the show. And I think it's really good. Like that stuff really permeates, and all this stuff that is all under the surface is fantastic. It's just I kind of want a little more on the surface also, and just a little better pacing. But it's a well-made show. I think it did really well with the critics, but not as well with the audience on Rotten Tomatoes. And I think it's probably because of that pacing. It's just a slow-paced story. But I kind of want to get to the end because I have a feeling there's more bad deeds to be done that will make it more interesting. So just wanted to throw
I'm
that one
curious.
out there. Yeah,
I'm curious. Why did they make it a show?
I think because if you told us in 2 hours, you wouldn't get a lot of a lot of that underlying um, character work. So, like I said, with Dakota Fanning and with Andrew Scott, like there's
Sure.
a lot going on that kind of has to be developed over time. You could have told it a as a movie, and it definitely obviously would have been really fast paced in that case. But it's tricky because then it wouldn't have been what it is, which is a better drama, right? It shouldn't be an action story. It should definitely be a drama. It just
Hmm.
shouldn't be so dramatic that there's it feels like the show is 75% you know mood and atmosphere and 25% dialogue and action. And I think that is probably an exaggeration, but it should definitely be at least a little more exciting than it is. So I'm kind of side with the audience on this one in that I probably wouldn't rate it quite as high as the critics, because the critics are always looking for their artistic darling, and this is definitely artistic.
Hmm.
But I think it could stand to be a little less artistic and a little more exciting, but not a lot. Uh, but yeah, it wouldn't have worked as a movie. It probably would have been a 2.5 to 3 hour movie, and it would have been a little more exciting than it probably should be, which is kind of funny because my critique is that it's not exciting enough.
Hmm.
Um, but I think if it was a 6 hour series, and they just cut out a little bit, it could be a little more exciting. But like I said, it is gorgeous. Like it's in black and white. The location stuff is incredible, and the acting is really great. It's just slow. So that's Ripley. So Andrew's back. He got past security despite my best efforts. Um, I know, Andrew, you haven't watched a lot, but you are completely caught up on X-Men 97, which I started tonight. I'm not as gung-ho about it yet as everybody else is. I know that it is the highest rated Marvel TV show on Disney Plus
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot for me to catch up on, but X-Men and me have an interesting history in that when the show was actually out in the 90s, I didn't really like it because the animation was not like up to the standard of like the 80s animation. And I'll just kind of really gloss over this really quickly. So they use an animation studio called ACOM, and it's out of Korea. And Toei, which is in Japan, is what was used for things like GI Joe and Transformers. ACOM was cheaper. The first X-Men pilot was actually a Toei one, and the animation's awesome. The 90s one is a bit more just blocky or whatever. So anyway, fast forward to 2014, X-Men Days of Futures Past is coming out. And because the X-Men have such a rich comic lore, I wanted to bone up on all of the X-Men before I went to see this movie, because it was going to be a big epic event. And Days of Future Past is absolutely, I think it's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's one of them. And my girlfriend watched it and she got it. She was like, yeah, I see why you love this movie so much. I watched all the X-Men original series like in like a matter of maybe 3 weeks. Now we have X-Men 97. X-Men 97 basically is a continuation. It's not a reboot. It's like they literally, like, it's as if the original show never ended and it's continuing. And one of the things I believe Kevin Feige said, he was only going to greenlight the show on 2 conditions. And one was you kept the damn theme song. And then 2, you have a lot of the same voice actors, which is huge to me, which is why I keep mentioning Kevin Feige, because people say, oh, Andrew, get off his dick or whatever. But it's like, no, dude, like special people do matter. They do exist. And if Kevin Feige was gone, the Marvel Studios would not be what it is. Sometimes it does take one person to make a difference. Steve Jobs was the same thing for Apple. When he left, it started to tank, came back, and he brought it back. So fuck the haters. Kevin Feige's the man. Fucking listen to him. Even Robert Downey Jr. said, don't bet against Feige. It's a losing bet. Yeah. So the show, I love it. Now, when I started episode 1, yes, I agree. It almost felt like too much nostalgia, but you know, Cyclops has always been that dude. He's like, you know, and I feel like in live action, you know, there's like the straight ahead character who's kind of like the good guy, but then there's like the rebel, right? So thank you for letting me just rant for a second. Okay, so Batman's the goody two shoes. I'm sorry, Superman is the goody two shoes. Batman's the rebel, right? So back in the early 80s, Superman was cool, but by the late 80s, it's like, we want rebel. So it's Batman. Captain America, Iron Man, okay? So in like the comics, it's always Cap who's a leader, but in the movies, we started with Iron Man. He's a bad boy, but then they figured out how to make the good guy a badass in Winter Soldier, okay? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You have Leonardo, who's like the good guy, and then you've got Raphael, who's like the rebel. In the cartoon, it's Leonardo. If you watch the live action movie, though, Raphael's the main character again. So finally, with the X-Men, I'm sorry, Lauren, I'm sure of all the characters of the live action X-Men movies, whose name do you know? Or at least the actor.
Jennifer Lawrence.
Interesting. Okay, so that didn't work. But anyway, I would say Wolverine.
Yeah, you're going with Hugh Jackman.
Wait, do it again. Hugh Jackman. Yeah, just kidding. Sorry.
You're fine. But anyway, so
it's
not
like, my element.
No, but I'm sure you've heard of Hugh Jackman. I'm sure you know.
No idea who he is. He's only like my favorite person in the world. Love
because
him.
Of The Greatest Showman. So,
yes.
Anyway, so Wolverine, it was the Wolverine show, okay? So all I saw through out my feed, and it was so awesome because I've even, like, I'm being a bit vulgar, but even being at work, I would rant about this. And then this buddy of mine named Mario goes, yo, how does Cyclops dick taste, right? Because I'm just like, I'm so on Cyclops, whatever. But it's like, no, Cyclops is a badass. You fucking fucked him over in the live action movies. But in the cartoon, there is a scene, not a spoiler, but basically they're all falling from the ground and he literally shoots his eye blast, okay, into the ground. And then basically it cushions his fall and he lands in that biggest superhero pose. And he's like, to me, my X-Men, like he's like the leader, okay? And it's like, finally, we're giving Cyclops his due, okay? Because it was never meant to be a one-person show. It was supposed to be a team. And that's what we get from this show. The animation is next level. And it gets better and better as it goes along. But yeah, no, I'm in. And I literally, like, I just finished it tonight, and episode 5, people are talking about like, oh my God, don't spoil it. And it's really intense. And that was too much. Like someone said that was too much, right?
Mm-hmm. I've heard that.
I watched it, and you know me, I like Attack on Titan, man. So nothing can be too much for me. But that said, yo, like I was like, y'all need to like do some timey-wimey, like extra dimension shit, because y'all did some shit that you can't reverse. Like some shit goes down. And all right, so if you're a Magneto fan, I would say this is the show for you. If you're a Rogue fan, this is the show for you. If you're a Jean Grey fan, this is the show for you. We haven't seen Mystique yet, so no Jennifer Lawrence for you. But Mystique was basically the Jennifer Lawrence character.
Who plays Storm? Is Storm in it?
Oh, Storm is
Yeah.
absolutely in it.
Who's
And
playing
I've
Storm?
heard they really wrote her kind of what's the term they use in as a mutant? She's is it Omega level? Is that what
yeah,
they
she's
call
an
it?
Omega. Yeah, she's super
Yeah,
powerful.
and they historically have kind of been bad about showing that because it's the same problem you have with Superman, right? Like if you show how powerful somebody is when they're that powerful, it makes them less. It makes everything else feel less kind of I don't know. Real isn't the word I'm looking for. Maybe
Stakes, whatever.
relatable, you
Oh yeah,
know.
sure. The God
Um,
problem.
but yeah, but she is one of the most powerful mutants there is. You've got um, Jean Grey, you've got Professor X, you have Storm, and you have Magneto, and a handful of others. But like
And
she's
Apocalypse.
yeah,
You know?
and but
Uh,
she's as badass as it gets,
yeah,
I've heard they do a good job showing that in this
1000%.
series.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've seen too that um, I like is a lot of people have been saying that there's a noticeable lack of Wolverine in this.
Yeah.
And there it's really a positive thing because like you said, he is the guy that everybody kind of wants to see. And so when you force everybody to look at everybody else through, without Wolverine there, you kind of get a better look at who these people are. Um, Scott Summers in the comics is far more, um, intelligent and, mentally strong than he was in the movies for sure.
Dude, he was we don't speak of Cyclops in the movie now. But at the same time, like Wolvie, even in the show though, is very much who he was in the
Yeah.
90s show.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of payoffs, like a lot of stuff that um a lot of stuff that was established in the 90s show, there's some culmination. And so culmination, payoff, amazing animation. And also, I can't believe I haven't said this. That show was so like sociologically unafraid and ahead of its time in a way. Like a lot of the stuff that was even happening during like, George Floyd and the tiki torches and all that stuff. Like that's the Friends of Humanity, man. Like in the X-Men, it's like it's all there. So, you got Morph, who's like, anyway, he's supposed to be like non-binary, so it's like the show was very progressive, but again, the X-Men, like, and even like the comic book character, he's not an X-Man, but Black Panther was made before the Black Panther Party. Like it's literally like Stan Lee has always been about like addressing social issues, and this show absolutely carries that torch. And um man, I actually kind of wonder, like, for like the average comic book fan who like watches this show, like, are they even like getting it, or is it just going over their head and they're just kind of like, oh my God, like fight scenes and like explosions, like they're not even like, it's not even sinking in. Because to me it's like, whoa, like they said that like in the show, like that's crazy, um but yeah, when you
Like
see
subliminal messaging, like
or
interweaves.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, so yeah, all I gotta say is I'll say one more thing and then I'll shut up. There is a 90s song that I've always loved, and it's kind of a weird 90s song because it was never a single, but it was by a pop group. I'll just say it, by a pop group called Ace of Base. But this song basically is kind of really kind of almost fascist and dystopian. And it turns out that like I think one of the members actually was a neo-Nazi. So anyway, that song shows up in X-Men, and I was just like, whoa. And again, I can say it's because most people wouldn't even realize that was a real song. But I was like, wow, the creators were really thoughtful about even the music choice, because I've never heard a pop song in a fucking cartoon.
Mm-mm.
And they did it. So there is so much talent and so much thoughtfulness and care that has gone into this production. So hats off to Kevin Feige, to all the people. Hats off to Larry Houston, who was a Facebook friend of mine, who actually was heavily involved in the 90s show. And he must have been so hard. It must have been so hard to not say anything, because you knew this was happening, and you were and you are involved as a consultant on the show, but you should be proud. Like this, like your legacy is now just it's in very good hands. So Kevin, I know you weren't that like impressed by the first episode, but yes, I just like you look forward to my take on the end of Invincible. I'm looking forward to your take on X-Men 97.
Yeah, I think like I said, the for me the first episode just feels like it's trying a little hard to be like this. We're still this thing that was back then. And some of the dialogue is a little corny, and some of the stuff is a little still feels a little 97, which they're trying to do. They're trying to bridge that gap. So I'm not even remotely close to giving up on it or anything. It's my next thing to watch, I think. But it just is a little coming off of something like Invincible and some of the more modern shows that I've been watching. um it doesn't feel as, I don't know, I guess mature as that, even though it's not because of the content. It's just like storytelling now is different than storytelling was in 97, right? I mean, it's almost 30 years ago. And I think, like I said, I think they're bridging that gap. So I want to see where it ends up by the time
Oh yeah,
it's
that's
done.
what I'm saying. Progressively, yeah.
Yeah. And I've heard that. So like I said, when I saw it, I was like, okay, I know I need to give it some time. Because it's not going to stay this thing. Would you say though, is it like an M for mature kind of show, or is it still very kid friendly in that regard?
So Invincible is M, right?
For
This is
sure,
not
for
this
sure.
is not M, although again, I think in episode 5, they kind of turn it up a notch. I think that like if so there's no cursing, right? But
Mhm.
there's violence. And
Yeah,
there's a level of violence that never appeared in the
in the
previous
original.
episodes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And they just
okay. That I think makes sense to me, like as an evolution of the show and where it's going and where kind of comic book stories are now. Um, I when they brought it back, it seemed like they weren't trying to bring back a Saturday morning kids cartoon show. They
this
were
is for
trying to
us.
take that thing to the next level. Yeah, and it's for us, the people that watched it before.
Yes.
Um, I mean, it would still be safe for kids, but it would just be a
Yes.
little darker.
Yeah.
So like a T for teen kind of thing, not an M for
Yes.
mature kind of thing.
Yes.
All right, cool. Well, speaking of M for mature and Invincible, you're getting caught up on Invincible. I finished Invincible this week. Um, and it is it, it's a great animated show. Like it's a superhero show. It is 100% M for mature, but mostly for language and violence. It is uh I don't know if I would say it's gratuitously violence, but when it's violent, it's
For the whole
violent.
bag.
Um, but it's got some really great storylines, and it's funny because you're on episode 5 right now, and I know there's things that um because you're basically just starting the second half of the season, so like right where it
Correct.
came back, right?
Yes.
So there's definitely things that are going to pay off from the beginning, things that you've been waiting to see, that you're going to see. And I think like I said in the pre-show, I think the last like 2 minutes are going to be some really like, oh shit moments, not from an excitement standpoint, like they're not crazy and over the top and building to this next like crazy battle or some crazy shit, but it's just like a couple of pieces of dialogue that change like everything. And it's a trip because it from a storytelling standpoint, and I can't give it away because I don't want to ruin it, but from a storytelling standpoint, it is brilliant storytelling because you're basically saying, you really are saying everything can be different now. We can do so much different stuff, and you're like, now you have to sit in it. You have to wait. Now, the good thing is I've heard they've already finished recording the next season's
Dialogue.
dialogue. So all the audio for season, I guess 3 is in the can. So they're going to start,
Animating.
animating, which is not a quick process either. Which you're not there yet, but there's an episode where him and his girlfriend go to like a Comic-Con,
Mhm.
and they meet an artist, and when they're talking to the artist, they kind of poke fun at the animation process. And so they're like, notice that, to save money, he's talking about how they're going to make his comic book into an animated show, and he's like, well, watch and you'll notice that sometimes, to save money, you won't see the mouth move. Instead, you'll see the dialogue from behind the character's head, and so it shows that whole scene from behind the character's head. And then like, or sometimes you pan out to a whole, a room full of characters, that's way zoomed out, and because you're so wrapped up in it, you don't realize that nobody's moving.
Right.
Right? And it's all this stuff, and it's so like tongue in cheek and so meta, and it's uh it's really uh it's really fun. So it's definitely a show that's not afraid to kind of poke fun at itself or poke fun of the world that it's in. And it's always been a show too that kind of like The Boys really takes the comic book and the comic book stories and really makes you look at them in a different way. And I think this is less, I don't know, less angry than The Boys maybe,
Much
but
less so.
but it's still the same idea. Like you're taking superheroes and making them really imperfect, but making
Really
them
flawed.
really kind of human, and I think it's really fun. So if you've never seen Invincible and you're into superhero stuff, it's 100% a watch. This last season is really good, and like I said, when you get wrapped up into it, when you get really caught up into what's going on and who all the characters are, and what they mean to the story, when you get to the end of the season, like I said, it's not a huge like exciting moment, like it's not action, but it's a big deal. So
So it's funny. I'm actually keeping track now. So Invincible was my favorite show of 2021. Um, uh, Stranger Things season 4 was my favorite show of 2022, and Beef was my favorite show of 2023. So we'll see what 2024 has in store.
apparently, whatever it is going to need Stephen Yun in it.
Right. But like in Amber, I have to say Amber is like, I'm not hating Amber as much. I remember the first
The
season I couldn't
girlfriend,
yes, couldn't
yeah,
stand
I've
it.
just never been a fan of hers.
But she seems a bit better now. And it's funny that it's funny I haven't even talked about it. Well, Attack on Titan is just different. It's in its own league. But I'm just
Yeah.
talking about shows that are like from a certain era or a certain
Mhm.
year. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing where Invincible goes. But again, at the end of this last episode, episode 5, like some shit that I didn't think was gonna happen happened, and it seems pretty permanent. And I'm sad because I liked those characters. Yes, Lauren, they kill them off. So yeah, no one's safe. Hell, I'm even worried about Mark, for crying out loud. Like I am. Like I don't think he's like totally safe. So, and he's the main character.
But he especially, let's see, in the break between the two seasons, that's when him and his dad get their ass handed to him, right? Like
By
that's
both of
where it
them.
ends. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that leaves it in a very interesting place, because then you take his dad out of the picture and he's left to kind of pick up the pieces. Also, given the message that, hey, go get your people ready because we're coming for your planet. Like, and we're going to be your overlords. So prepare the human race to be, slaves. And you're like, oh, okay. And he's, at this point, he's been shown very clearly that he is not,
Up to snot.
he's not, in fact, invincible. Like
Yeah.
he's just a dude
He's a
that's doing his
halfling.
best. And he's the big fish in a small pond ultimately. Like
Yes.
on Earth, he's
He's king
the
shit.
baddest dude, but outside of Earth, man, there's a ton of people like him that can kick the living crap out of him. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty wild.
Last thing I'll say is I love that dumbass Martian who like it's his fault that those fucking starfish. Sorry, I'm just leaving it at that. Like, and it's just so funny how it's like, so it's your fault, or even like when they're like, oh yeah, well like they'll know it's us because they'll send the missiles. Like, wait, the ones coming right now? Like, yeah, like those ones. Like, he's
Yeah,
just such an
he's
idiot.
such an
Like,
idiot.
and there's people like that who exist, and that's what I love about it. It's like they could just are hopeless. There's hopeless motherfuckers out there. Anyway, yeah, all right, I'm done. We
This
can
is
talk
some
about this.
cast, by the way. I'm just like, as
Oh
you guys are
yeah,
Yeah,
talking, I'm looking
yeah.
at like who's voicing these people. I'm like, this is
yeah. It's
It,
really
legit.
quite the
and they're
cast.
good. Like it's not like they didn't just cast people and let them go and throw out, their dialogue and hit the road. Like they put real effort in. Like J.K. Simmons is friggin'
Yeah, he's
fantastic
on
in
there.
it.
Amazing.
He's yeah, he's awesome in it. Stephen Yun is great in it.
Yes.
Who his mom is played by Sandra Oh, right?
Show, right? Shit.
Sandra Oh is
Sandra
Sandra
Oh,
showing.
Oh,
right? Yeah,
yes. She's great.
I
Mark
fucking love her
Hamill's in
already.
it. And then
Yeah.
even season 2, home if you ever watched Better Call Saul, like one of my favorite actresses from that show is in season 2 as a bug, but it's like the voice acting is what is a huge part of what makes this show,
Hmm.
I think.
Oh, for sure. Because overall the art isn't overly impressive. Like it's
No,
clean. It's really
that's the
clean,
word,
but it's
clean.
not overly detailed. Like
No.
not something like even Attack on Titan has more detail in it all over
Oh,
the
way
place.
more.
And this is
Yeah.
very much just a very clean
Right.
animation style. But it works. It works really well. Um, but it really is. It is about the acting at the end. It's just great. And as a
Acting
matter of
and
fact,
monologue.
that's what makes the last few minutes of the finale so amazing is the acting. You can feel things in these characters that most animated shows aren't going to give you. Like they're fun or they're exciting or whatever, but they don't have feeling, and this show definitely has feeling behind it. So cool. So, well, speaking of feelings, Lauren, you watched No Hard Feelings with Jennifer
Yes.
Lawrence. And so if you want to talk about that for a minute, I've seen it. Andrew hasn't. I love it because I love Jennifer Lawrence. She is
I do too.
a queen in my book. I love her. So um,
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably one of the best comedies that I've seen in, I don't know how long. I want to say at least within the past 2, 3 years. It came out, what, last spring, summer?
something
Uh,
like that. Yeah.
yeah, and it stars Jennifer Lawrence and an actor by the name of Andrew Barth Feldman, who, complete tangent here, but in early 2020, I won the Broadway lottery for Dear Evan Hansen, and I was excited because that was a show that I wanted to see. It's my, if not top five, at least like top two, top three favorite Broadway musicals of all time. And Andrew Barth Feldman, the actor who's in No Hard Feelings, was playing Evan Hansen in Dear Evan Hansen when I saw it in early 2020 before the world shut down. And I couldn't but help think this guy is going places. Like he is just so incredibly talented. They, I guess, scouted him out on Long Island, and he was the first ever true high schooler playing Evan Hansen. The original Evan Hansen
It was Ben
and
Platt.
on Broadway was Ben Platt, exactly. And don't see the movie, but of Dear Evan Hansen, save
Because he's like
yourself.
40 playing a high schooler.
He looks like he's 40 playing a high
Yeah.
schooler. They did a horrible job. But nonetheless, I remember I was with my cousin. We were sitting in the front row because we won through the Broadway lottery, and we just saw. I don't know what he put in his eyes, but Andrew Barth Feldman is tearing up. I mean, it's a show about suicide and such, and very deep themes in that
Hmm. Yeah.
show. But I was just amazed not only by his voice, but just how he was able to just cry on a whim. And I was like, what? It was just, he was very talented. But as soon as this movie came out, I was like, oh my God, that's the kid. That's the guy from Dear Evan Hansen. So, anywho, what is No Hard Feelings about? It's about this woman who's kind of, I guess, having a hard time. That's like a nice way of putting it. She's out of money. She lives in Long Island. She is in a position where she owns her parents' house and she doesn't really have any family. Her boyfriend, I guess at the beginning they broke up, and all she really has is the house and a couple of part-time jobs. And the main thing that she does to pay the bills is being an Uber driver or a Lyft driver. And when one of her ex-boyfriends gets rid of her car, I guess it was, I don't know, oh, there was too many issues with the car, and he ends up, I guess, repoing it. Is that what?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's
something like that.
repo. They tow it or
Yeah,
something.
they
Yeah.
tow it in the beginning. And she's like, "Well, what am I gonna do now? It's like a summer season." And I guess she lives in a town like near the Hamptons or somewhere in Long Island, which is a very like rich town where people will come in during the summer, and that's where she makes her money during these peak seasons. So she ends up working at a restaurant bartending in the meantime, and all she's got is roller skates. And she finds on Craigslist this ad for someone posting to date their son, awkward son, over the summer, and they would not only pay them, but they would give them a car. And that's when she was like, huh, this could be an easy gig. I just have to pretend to be somebody's girlfriend. So she meets the parents, and the parents are played by Laura Benanti and Matthew Broderick. And this whole plan is for their son, who is, I guess, a senior in high school going into college, never to know. And their whole intent was this kid is not prepared socially for college. He doesn't really have any friends. He's a gamer and maybe has online friends, but doesn't have friends in real life. How can we get him to blossom and be ready socially for college? So they hire Jennifer Lawrence, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm like in my early 30s." And they have her show up to his place of work, which is volunteering at a dog shelter, I believe. And it's just hysterical because she's has to pretend like she's really interested in this like awkward 17, 18-year-old, and clearly she's not. And he is not, you can't tell if he's even like into women at first. And just the film itself, she's true to herself if you've watched her interviewed at all. And there's just so many scenes in particular that I just couldn't stop laughing. And I went with one of my girlfriends to the theaters when we initially saw it, and the same scenes just still crack me up. I've seen it, I think, 2 or 3 times since it came on Netflix, but highly recommend. I mean, it's heartwarming at times, but also you just, if you need a good laugh, and it's not like anything like hurtful or anything like that. It's just hysterical. I think it's hysterical, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's what, you know, it's the first or one of the first like kind of raunchy comedies in a while. Like, because it
Hmm.
definitely doesn't pull any punches in that regard. There's a scene where she gets on a fight on the beach and she is
Yeah.
completely naked fighting these guys
Yeah.
on the beach or chasing them off or whatever. And I think just her being herself almost is what um is what makes this movie work. She's so damn funny in real life. Like she's so
100%.
crazy and so um just nutty, and this character is exactly that. And and the kid she's trying to date is so awkward and so weird that every exchange they have um is awkward and funny, and it's just, I mean, it's fantastic, and the cast is great.
Yeah,
um and it's just, it's kind of one thing after another, right? If you think of any kind of raunchy comedy, like everything kind of one ups itself as the story goes on until you hit a point where things get kind of real, and then it's got to resolve that issue,
right.
and work its way back to where it was. And it does a great job with it because yes, she's hilarious, yes, she's crazy and all that, but she's also a really good actress. So when she needs to play those, even when they're funny, those scenes that matter, and those um those things that are important to the story, she's so good at it. And so I
Definitely.
think it's just a lot of fun.
And the character, the son who plays Percy, he grows throughout the film. He's still awkward at the end, but he's at least someone who's opening up and willing to make friends. And, you know, they form a bond and a friendship, even though, like, obviously he finds out, like, that's not someone that actually wants to be my love interest. But nonetheless, this is somebody who has a big heart, and this is someone who, and I think they bring out the best in each other. She becomes more
Hmm.
motivated because of him, and really gets her life together more so than she was. I think she had been hurt so much in the past where she just didn't take life as seriously. And I think I'm gonna call him a kid. This kid definitely gives her sort of a wake up call that, like, life's moving pretty fast and you need to,
Yeah.
to do something about it, and definitely make the most of it and be your best self in order to move forward. So great film. I can't stop laughing every time I see it. I've introduced it to a couple of people, and not one person has said, "Oh, I didn't really like." Everyone cracked up. So yeah, if you're looking for something lighthearted and just funny, a little bit, raunchy. I mean, if you're into Jennifer Lawrence, you see a lot of her. Yeah,
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
you do. But yeah, definitely give it a try and go from there. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely recommend it to anybody that likes comedy. It is over the top. It is a little crazy. So, if you're a little more of a serious drama person, maybe it's not for you. But
It's not
otherwise,
a
it's
rom-com, just to clarify. It's not a rom-com. It's just, I don't think it is, at least. I think it's just hysterical.
yeah, it's weird because like the setup kind of is rom-com, right? Like boy meets girl, they have to do thing, and but that's not really what it's about.
The
It's more
intent.
of it's almost like a coming of age story, except she's 30, right? Like she's
Right,
learning to be an adult as somebody that's been adult for a long time and has been really bad at it. And
right.
he's learning to come out of his shell too. Like they're both growing from this relationship.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a good story on all sides.
Yeah, and if you're looking for something that's, Jennifer Lawrence, that's more of a different character than she normally plays, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I want to see her in a lot more comedy. She's so good at it. She's so good at it.
She is,
So,
yeah, unexpectedly too. I mean, I shouldn't say unexpectedly because she is herself, like her true self in many ways. But prior to that, I mean, I just knew her from, like, um, Hunger Games and the movie where she plays a ballerina. Is it Red Sparrow? Red Sparrow, which came out in 2018, 2019,
yeah,
where
I
she
think
plays like
so.
a spy.
Hmm.
Yeah, she was
Well,
great.
it's funny you guys talk about that because the first time I ever saw her was in Silver Linings Playbook, and I feel
Which
like
Oh,
I
that
okay.
love her
movie
in. I love her in.
was like a bit
Best
comedic.
actress.
Well, there you go. Yeah, and it was comedic too. So I felt like even
Yeah.
though it was drama, there was comedy, and
Yeah, that's
like
true.
I'll never like the My Sharia Moore is forever associated with Freakouts by what Homeboy, whatever. Because I every time that was a song I think that like had something to do with his ex-wife or whatever, and he like tear up places. Like it was a trigger for him. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, that was the first time I saw her. And yeah, so I actually do think in some ways I almost feel like again having not seen this movie. I feel like it's almost a return to form in a way. Now, Silver Lining wasn't a raunchy comedy,
No,
but it was still like quirky, And I think that this movie sounds quirky. I don't know if it is, but and
can
Silver
Mm,
be.
Linings
Yeah.
is definitely quirky, because
yeah.
it was like she's just jogging and shit, and I barely remember. But I just remember the movie was it about bipolar? Like that was yeah, I think that was the issue.
She,
Yeah,
yeah.
mental illness and I believe I want to say alcoholism or drug addiction too, or no, am I
I
making
don't,
that up?
I
I
think
don't
they
think it's
both just had
drugs. It could have been
bipolar.
alcohol. But they were both kind of a mess. Both her
Yeah,
and Bradley Cooper were
correct.
definitely a
Bradley
mess,
Cooper,
and
yes.
yeah, and the way
Yeah,
they kind of came together was really nice. Like it's a really good movie, Silver Linings Playbook. I like that one a lot. And
it
actually,
is.
I every time I think about it, I'm like, shit, I need to watch that again because it's been so long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And I keep forgetting. Like I really do need to watch it again because I really did enjoy it, and it was a very it's a smart
Silent
movie
theater.
for what it is. Yeah.
Mhm.
well, that's what put her, like, should I say that's what put her on the map? Well,
I
from
think it
at least,
is.
Well,
yeah,
no, what put her on the map was winning the Oscar at what 15 or whatever it was for Winter's Bone, and then she did the
Oh,
Hunger Games, and then you know,
goodness.
um, but I think that was her next Oscar nomination. But I mean, she went on a tear for a little while. She was at the Oscars and on
A
stage a
lot.
lot in like her first like 3 years after Winter's Bone. Um, so yeah, she's just, I mean, she's crazy talented. She's, emphasis on the crazy sometimes, but it works
Yeah.
for her and she's fun. Like she's one of those people I'm like, she, in the right
She's the
situation,
life of
like,
party.
yeah, like she's one of those people that I'd be like drawn to, right? Like I'd just be like, whatever you
Totally.
say, let's go do something. She'd be like, let's go do something really stupid, like jump off a building. I'd be like, okay, Jennifer, let's go jump off a building.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. No, she's one cool chick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Winter's Bone 2010,
Wow.
then X-Men First Class 2011, Hunger Games 2012. So Hunger Games and Silver Linings came out the same year.
Yeah.
And
I
I know
did
that
not
like
know that X-Men was before
yeah,
Hunger Games.
yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
And I know she wasn't even formally trained. I think that was also a big part of her story, like that she just kind of had the
She did, yeah,
gift.
she just showed up. Yeah, because
Yeah.
have you seen Winter's Bone?
No,
No.
I never even heard it till this fucking podcast.
She's so good. She's so like when you see her in that as like and she looks young because I think she was 15. Like she was really young, and so she was a kid and she was kind of like this dirty backwoods kid kind of thing. And so when she showed up to the Oscars, that's when she showed up in that red dress. So she was
Yeah,
like,
looking at it.
or maybe she was 17 in it because like I think she was 18 at the Oscars, but like all of a sudden there was this girl who was really homely but like great. I mean, she can tell she's pretty, but she's homely. Her character is going through all this stuff, and it's in like the kind of the backwoods in like
Mhm.
Alabama or
Ozarks,
somewhere
yes,
in the yeah, okay.
Missouri.
A- and and so when she showed up to the Oscars and she's wearing that red dress, and all of a sudden everybody's like, "Oh shit, this girl is beautiful."
Beautiful.
And then, and she was relatively normal that time around. Like she was still kind of coming up. But like the next time is when she like tripped on the way up, up the stairs.
That
And
was her Silver Linings Playbook in the
yeah,
classic like pink gown. Yeah.
And the Oscar goes to Jennifer Lawrence.
Silver Linings nominated in this category for Winter's Bone.
Thank you. You guys are just standing up because you feel bad that I fell, and that's really embarrassing, but thank you.
yeah. And then everybody realized, oh shit, this girl's she's a character. Like she is a personality. And so she's always been that since. And I think that, for me, that's one of the things that I love about her is that she's just,
So authentic.
yeah, like she is 100% herself, and she don't really give a shit if you like it or not. She's like, I am me, and I'm gonna keep being me, and enjoy it or don't, but get out of the way.
Yeah. And she's a
Uh,
mom now too. So she's living the mom life.
yep,
And
yep. Which
uh,
which she was a mom before this movie, I think. I think in No Hard Feelings, that was
mhm.
post pregnancy, and she looks
Yeah.
looks pretty damn
Yeah.
good. So
Yeah.
all right, cool. Well, the only thing I have left is kind of a big deal, to be honest, is Fallout. Fallout. Um, it is on Amazon Prime. It is like the big thing of the week. So this is a video game adaptation, um, which has, because of the way that it came out and the way that it was made and the money they put behind it, has drawn some comparisons to The Last of Us, which is an Emmy-winning, amazing television show. And there's been a lot of comparisons. I've seen a lot of people, especially in the video game community, that say that it's actually a better show than The Last of Us. And I personally do not agree. I prefer The Last of Us to Fallout, but I love Fallout. And I will say that I actually think that Fallout is a better video game adaptation than The Last of Us. And the reason that I say that is that The Last of Us is almost a movie that's a video game. Like there's no real freedom in The Last of Us. You play a straightforward single character through the game, and maybe you switch once or twice, but you're always one character doing very specific things. You don't have any real freedom. You are experiencing this story, and that's beautiful. And like the games are, you're talking about probably my two favorite games of all time, The Last of Us and Last of Us Part Two. And so when you make that TV series and you say we are making this story again for people maybe that don't play the game, like you guys, right? So they did a perfect job or a near perfect job. And for me, that is a phenomenal TV show. It has one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen.
Episode 3.
In episode 3, like it's great. What Fallout does differently is that the Fallout games, there's a handful of them. I want to say there's 6, I think, but the main ones are 1, 2, 3, and 4. They've gone to the fourth one. And they are open world games. You play a character and you have a lot of freedom. You can choose the parts of the story that you want to do. You know, you choose if you're going to be good, or you're going to be bad, or you're going to be part of this group of people or this group of people. And there's all this freedom. And so to make a show out of that, like Fallout, you have to really respect the world that you're making and do your best to keep that, visually, there and spiritually there. But when this character right here is your main character, her name is Lucy, she is not from the games. Nobody in this is a direct character from the other games. The way that the Fallout games work is there's a story that takes place in an individual city. So I think Fallout 4 was Boston. They actually have a game called New Vegas that obviously takes place in Vegas. And so they've all been in different places. This one takes place in Los Angeles. And so the story behind Fallout is that in a time period that looks like it's like the 50s, but there's still technological advances that don't quite line up. So it's kind of almost like an alternate world. We are at war with Russia. So we're fighting communism. We're going through all this stuff that we went through in the 50s. And to prepare for nuclear war, this company called Vault Tech built, it's like a couple hundred vaults, I think, across the country. And people paid to live in these vaults in case of nuclear war, or they had the vaults so they could go there in the case of nuclear war. And what happens is those vaults get sealed up, and then you are stuck in there until whatever criteria is met for the vault door to be open and for people to be let out. And so that's where the games all start. Usually they start with you escaping, or it's your what they call your vault day. So you get to leave the vault and go see what the outside world is all about. And so this one has its own reason for her to leave. It takes place in the first episode. I don't think I want to spoil anything if I don't have to. So I'll try and stay a little clear of that. But the gist of it is that she leaves the vault. So Lucy leaves the vault and leaves her brother behind, and goes out on this adventure to find her dad. And along the way, we meet other people that are, different parts of the Fallout world in their own way. So you've got this guy over here in kind of a full suit of armor. And he's part of what's called the Brotherhood of Steel, which is people that have been living on the surface for a long time. And they literally have body armor because the outside world is like crazy with all the fallout and all the nuclear radiation, everything out there. There's all kinds of mutations, right? So at one point you find out that like cockroaches are like 50 times as big as they used to be, right? Like they've grown and are, monsters basically. Bears are monsters. There's all this stuff out there that can kill you. And so, these guys have these suits of power armor, so they go out and try and protect the world, but they live by kind of this knight's code. So if you're in the armor, you're a knight, and you have a squire, and you treat the squire like shit. So this guy actually starts off the story as a squire, right? So he's just getting kind of crapped on in the beginning. And he goes through, his little adventure. And then you've got Walton Goggins here, who, if you don't know who Walton Goggins is, go watch Vice Principals, go watch Justified, go watch, what's the religious one where they're in the church, but it's a comedy on HBO, The Righteous Gemstones. Like, go watch anything that Walton Goggins has ever done. He is amazing. Nobody talks about him. They will now. Like, I think this is finally his moment that people are going to be talking about Walton Goggins the way that they should have been when he was on Justified. He is a fantastic actor. He is one of those guys. Funny enough, actually, Michael Emerson, Andrew makes an appearance in this. He played Ben Linus in Lost. And
Oh,
you know how Ben kind of always walks that line between good and evil, right? Like,
yes.
Walton Goggins is amazing at that also.
Okay.
And so Michael Emerson appears in this show also, but Walton Goggins is actually one of the three main characters. And he's amazing. So the acting in the show is fantastic. The world building in the show is fantastic. You really figure out what everything is, what's going on around you. You know, there's a puzzle to be had through the 8 episodes. The first one's a little longer than the other ones, but they're all roughly about an hour. So you can expect it to be about an 8-hour undertaking. And like I said, for me, it is a perfect video game adaptation in that it takes all the things that work, it takes all the things that people love, and it puts them into a new world respectfully and makes them work. Where, Halo got a lot of crap because it didn't really feel great. Like, they took a character and they kind of tried to make it an alternate universe. They said it was based on some Halo books instead of the Halo video games, and it just never felt quite right. And it was too dark and gritty. Fallout is not a comedy, but it does have a lot of comedy elements in it. And so it's one of the reasons that I say that you can't, comparing it to The Last of Us is like comparing apples and oranges. They're both fruit, but they're very different. And they're both fantastic. And I think Fallout, I think anybody can enjoy it. It's definitely, it has its bits of violence. Like, it can be a little graphic at times. There's one early sex scene in the first episode that's not very graphic, so it's fine. And then there's one scene where everybody's getting all weird, and there's a little bit of, you know, top half nudity in one scene for about 5 minutes. But otherwise, it's, other than language and violence, it's nothing, over the top. And it's so good. It's so good. And the way that these three characters start off completely separate from each other. They don't know who each other are. They have no connection to each other. And they come together and kind of intertwine through all the way through to the end. And it's really, really good. And everybody does a great job with the characters that they have. And everything about it looks beautiful in a very post-apocalyptic wasteland kind of way, right? Like, there's definitely scenes, especially in the beginning when she comes out of the vault and she's on, it looks like, I think it's the Santa Monica Pier, right? So she's in LA near the ocean. I mean, everything is sand, like everything has been blown away, right? But it's still somehow beautiful. Like, it's got that kind of orange tint you kind of see in anything that's deserty, right? But it's beautiful. And she goes through all this stuff, and there's a lot of things that are really vibrant and a lot of things that are really not, and that they're all kind of just the way they're supposed to be. So it's really a lot of fun. And to see, number one, this girl, she was in Yellow Jackets. Her name is Ella Purnell. She's been in a couple other things, but she is fantastic in this because she's so sheltered. Like, she's been inside this vault, living by vault rules and all this stuff. And she's so sweet and so adorable that she's not ready for this outside world. Crazy people, marauders and raiders and monsters and people that have kind of been living by their own rules and stuff for so long. And she's just, like I said, she's so just adorable.
Okie dokie.
And her physical features play into that. She's got these huge
Oh,
eyes. Like, she's such like I don't mean in a bad way. She's a strange looking girl. Like she has features that are very exaggerated, but she is beautiful. But she's also, you know, awkward and goofy, and it plays into, you know, who she is as a character, and it's just great. And the funny thing is that the guy in the power armor suit, I don't know the actor's name, but physically he reminds me so much of Jonathan Majors. That like part of me was like, shit, they could have just cast him as Kang and kept going in the MCU, and maybe nobody would notice, but their voices are so different. He definitely has kind of a meek voice, whereas I think
Dude,
Jonathan Majors.
sorry, Walton Goggins was an Ant-Man.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah,
small part in
I know
Ant-Man.
him.
Small
Yeah,
part
but
in
he's
Ant-Man and
in
definitely
that.
funnier.
Yeah.
Justified, if you haven't watched it, is a great show. Anyways, it's a cop show, but it takes place in the South. I forget where, but you know, it's uh, kind of almost like a modern day Western.
Mhm.
But Walton Goggins is like the old bad guy from the main character's past, and so they have a history, you know, with each other. And I mean, Walter, he walks that line of being the bad guy and the good guy so well that it's great. And he's the same in this, but he's a little funnier.
And then I just gotta say really quick, Ella Purnell, I've seen like just connected to this show. I'm like, okay, so like to me, you're a cross between like Summer Glau and like Winnie Cooper. I forget the Winnie Cooper actress's name, but like I don't because Winnie Cooper
Yeah.
had that kind of like that chin, and I feel like she has that, and then she has a Summer Glau kind of eyes. So it's a good look. Just saying.
Yeah, no,
But
she's
yeah,
beautiful, but she's odd looking, but it works,
no,
you
it
know?
works.
Yeah.
But you actually sold me on Michael Emerson, so I'm gonna give it like a watch. I'll give it like a one
Oh
episode.
yeah, I think
And Kyle MacLachlan's in it too. That's pretty cool.
Kyle MacLachlan is in it. Yeah. But yeah, I think you'll be in. I think when you watch that first episode, I think you'll be in pretty quick.
And you know, yeah, I like looking at beautiful things. So or people or whatever. So if Ella is like the main character, like I'll probably watch it. Shit, keep it real.
Yeah, it does a good job. I mean, she really is the main character. Like you spend the most time with her, but you do spend a lot of time with these other two characters
other two.
also. So, but it's really good. Like for me, it's a must watch. I think it's in the 80s or 90s on Rotten Tomatoes. I want to say it's an 8.7, I think, on Fallout, or sorry, on IMDb. It's 8.7 on
Damn.
IMDb. And then on Rotten Tomatoes, it's up in the high 80s for both critics and audience. I think it's pretty much the same on both counts here. And it is definitely,
dude.
Is it a 94?
94 average tomato, and then 87 average score, audience score. So I guess like it's a 90.
Pretty
So
high.
I guess that 94 might be critics.
Yeah. And so it's 94 critics, 87 audience. So it's good. I mean, the show is legit. It's a little,
and it's 200 years after the apocalypse, so it is indeed the future. Okay, good.
Oh yeah. And what's cool is that it fits into the timeline of all the other Fallout games. So that Fallout universe is all still one big universe.
Right.
And so, you know, where it ends, it definitely leads into what I hope is the second season. And it should be a lot of fun. Like it's just really good, and figuring out what's going on. Like there is a background mystery to be solved. So, you know, you can play the guessing game as you go and try and figure out what's going on there too. And it's really fantastic. So I would recommend Fallout to absolutely anybody, even if it doesn't feel like it's your jam. If you like good character work, I would say give it a shot and have a watch. So
It's interesting how they're making all these video games into shows now, and Halo was also Amazon Prime.
Halo was
Paramount.
the one that you have, Paramount.
That's Paramount.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
But I said it with The Last of Us, and Fallout is less in this category, but there's certain games out there that have a story that is so good and so interesting that it's unfortunate, or at least it was unfortunate for a long time, that non-gamers were never going to experience it. The
Right.
Last of Us has such an impressive story, such a beautiful story, and so many powerful moments in it that, like, the first time I played it, there were moments in it that brought me to tears in the game. It's a video game. I'm playing it, I'm brought like to an emotional point.
Hmm.
And like I knew people that I know would never play the game, and I'm like, you are actually legitimately missing out on something because this isn't something that you would normally do. And so when they take it and they make it into a series or a movie or whatever,
Right. It's
uh
opening that audience to, well, a story that probably wouldn't have been, I don't want to say told otherwise because it's told through the video game, but they
yeah.
really can expand upon it too. I'm assuming
Yeah,
like in a series.
yeah, and Prestige TV is I think is the difference maker, because they took something like
Hmm.
Assassin's Creed, which has some phenomenal storytelling, especially in the beginning of that game series, and they tried to make a movie out of it, and it didn't work. It was a bad movie, and they've done it a couple of times. Tomb Raider they did okay with here and there, and then they didn't do okay with it. Um, but that one kind of fits into a movie. It's almost Indiana Jones style. Same with Uncharted.
Right.
But for some of these bigger ones, so you're going to have God of War will be coming out soon. That has some incredible storytelling in the games that people would never experience. Not Event Horizon, Horizon Zero Dawn will be coming out as a series, and both of those are amazing. And then you have other animated spin-offs that have been brilliant. So if you've never seen Arcane is absolutely incredible. So I think we're in a good position now where people can um, experience these stories in a new way, and as long as the people that make them respect the original work, it'll be something really special. So
All right.
that is all I have. I don't. Does anybody have anything else that they want to throw out before we?
I'll just say that I did end up watching Poor Things during my hiatus, and I can definitely see why Emma Stone won the Oscar. I will say at the end of the day, for me, the primary theme of that film was about agency. It was about her as a woman actually just reclaiming her destiny and making her own choices and being free to even make mistakes, like going back with, the husband just to find out that he was just going to try to like kidnap her. And then she got out of there.
Right.
And then was able to, that's what it was, just about living her life on her terms, and yes.
And having a second chance to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like, she was like, I mean, it's the thing is like, she was her own person. Like, the first body was her mom, right? So like she's gone, but because she's now the baby's brain put in the mom's body,
Sure.
it's just kind of like she didn't have the baggage and the bullshit of society like in her brain holding her.
Right.
So this is someone who is literally like a blank slate, who's then able to like then navigate the world without all the mental bullshit that
That's
that
right.
husband gave her. So to me, it was like, it was anyway. I just thought it was very inventively told,
Yeah.
and Mark Ruffalo deserved every bit of his nomination too, because Mark Ruffalo strikes me as a very kind, caring person, but in this movie he is like the ultimate narcissistic asshole, but he's hilarious.
Right.
Then I also saw Three Body Problem, and I didn't get to watch you guys' discussion, but I know that I think both of you guys weren't too jazzed about the ending. And for me, I actually liked the show. Kevin wants to say something.
I was just gonna say I don't have a problem with the ending per se. I just have a problem with where it ended. It didn't feel like an ending.
Yeah,
It
I
just
wasn't
felt
expecting it.
like they're like, well, we ran out of shit, so hopefully we get a season 2. Like it
Check this out though.
didn't feel like
Like
a
so
stopping point.
there, I think that there's a Chinese one called Three Body. So
Yes,
it's all so in that
which
one
is more
doesn't
tight to the book. This one is less
right.
true to the
But
book.
it also ends, I think, at an earlier point than the English one. The English one went further along. I
'Cause
just I keep going.
I was gonna say, well, there's 3 books.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So,
so this one, the series that is on Netflix ends in the middle of the second book,
exactly.
roughly. And I think there's 3 distinct periods of time. And so I think what we saw is the ending of that first period of time. Like now we're going to jump into the future
Nice.
at least a little ways. But it just like, I don't know, there just needed to be some kind of definition that this was like they're just kind of standing on their beach and they're like, oh, dude, our bro went into space and now he's gone. Bummer. And then credits roll, and you're like, wait, what?
So all I gotta say is literally one of the most disturbing scenes I've ever seen on television in my life.
Episode 5.
Was that boat scene, dude.
Well,
Holy
have you ever
crap.
seen Ghost Ship?
No.
90s horror flick. Literally that exact thing happened. Now, I don't know when Three Body Problem was written. Ghost Ship is based on a horror film called something else ship. But anyways, the whole opening scene, it's literally the opening scene of the movie. And the boat stops in this place. I don't remember if the boat's haunted or if the location they stop in is haunted, but a cable snaps loose and slices through everybody on the deck. And there's this little girl who's shorter than everybody, so the cable goes over her head, and she watches everybody else get cut in half. Like the captain's right in front of her, gets cut in half, and his body slides off and falls right in front of her. Fucked up, but it's exactly like it's like they took this for the Three Body Problem and went,
Yeah.
hey, how can we do that, but like really fucked up?
Yes.
And like but it's so good. Like it's so cool. And that's actually, at least because I'm reading the books now. So I bought the books, I started reading them. I'm only 60 pages into the first one.
Mhm.
And it's definitely interesting because it was written 100% in Chinese by a Chinese author.
Yeah.
And I think the author was actually killed in China. I need to look it up and see, but like, because it has a take on Chinese politics for
Yes.
sure.
Oh, yeah.
And so it got translated in English, and they definitely did not do a bad job translating it. But anything that's translated from another language to English, there's a little bit of loss there, or a little bit of change there,
Sure.
things that are, more difficult to understand. So I'm definitely taking my time with it, but it's good. And so I'm curious to see how some of these things play out. And obviously I'll probably be done with all 3 of the books before the next season comes out.
Yeah.
So I have an idea what's going on at that point. But it's good stuff. Like, and I actually, Three Body is on Amazon. So if you want to watch the Chinese version of it, it's there.
Yeah.
You have to watch it with subtitles, though. There's no dubbing on it.
You're right. Understandably so. I don't know if I will. Just keeping it real. But I will say I like the little Cartman girl who was like, "Save me!" And she always dies in those little like simulation games. That was hilarious. Like, "I'll save you," like last time. Like,
Yeah, if she comes up, she's like, "Yeah, good job last time, dick."
yeah. No, I was fine with it. And yeah, I could say more, but I'll just say that those 30-something scientists were all pretty fucking self-absorbed, not very heroic. I loved the detective guy or whatever, basically Wong. I think Wong is a textbook ESTJ that you want you guy on the squad. I will say Sir Davos. Did you watch Game of Thrones, Lauren?
No.
Okay, so when I say these like Sir Davos, I'll be lost on you, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He's my dude. Like, he was my favorite character. Even though he was a fucking like, yo, Davos basically is like the mastermind. He's the one who's like, who knows how to like, get people in their positions to do what they need to do. But it sucks that the aliens came and were like, yeah, we're gonna fuck with you now.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, and I love how he's like, yeah, fuck that. No, I need to know if cryogenics, I'm the one being cryogenic, man. Like, I gotta be here to like make sure this shit works, I'm like, yeah, man, seriously, because if you're not there, anyway, I liked the show, and it was part of the national conversation. I was a little late to the party, but I caught up. I did also start Station 11. I'm almost done. I'm 3 episodes.
Okay, good.
But when I do finish it, I do want to talk about it because I know that you talked about it like probably a year or two ago.
I don't even know if I really talked about it.
Word? Okay, even better.
Yeah, so it'll be a fresh conversation for sure. I read the book and excuse me, and I've seen the show. So
And then I know it's late, but if you want to break it down, the Shen Yun situation, just to add some culture to the no culture scenario.
Sure. Okay, sure. So I've been seeing billboards and just all types of advertisements for Shen Yun for years now. It's been around since 2006, and it actually originated in New York City, but it is a performing arts show that showcases pre-communist Chinese culture, dating, I think they even said like thousands and thousands of years back in time. And there are some very talented artists on instrumentals and performers that are doing the traditional Chinese dancing that they have showcased there. The costumes are gorgeous if you're someone who's into different types of performances, and especially dance in particular. Like I've never been to Lincoln Center before, and this is what I've seen back yesterday for the first time, and I've been wanting to see it for years. And now that it's in New York, they have 8 different companies traveling, I believe, the US with this type of grouping. And apparently every single year they switch up the dances, the actual choreography as well. But the way that they showcased it was in the form of vignettes where they had a man and a woman come forward and speak to what we were about to see. And a lot of the individual scenes and dances were based on these stories. So it could be a story about love or heartbreak, or they had one scene about a restaurant being shut down due to a health inspector showing up and not liking what he saw, and seeing that. And it was very much so expressive in what they were dancing. And there were flips, there were splits, there were all these types of tricks in many cases, but they also had like a 3D background too. So I thought the coolest part personally was when you have these characters like in animation, like flying into the air from this like 3D holographic type of background, and then all of a sudden you see a dancer pop up from like the floor in the same outfit as their, I guess, avatar was in the background. So that was pretty cool. I think that's something that you and Kevin would maybe appreciate more than the actual music and dancing itself, but definitely a very creative production, and I'm glad I got to see it. The theater itself, the David Koch Theater out in Lincoln Center, is gorgeous. If you've never been there before, they have a lot of operas. I saw Hunchback of Notre Dame, or yeah, that last year in 2023. So highly recommend seeing a
Is the
production there at some
interior
point.
red?
Yeah.
Okay, that's where they fucking have. I keep cursing. That's where they have the MTV Video VMAs. Like the VMAs
so.
happen at Lincoln Center. I know '99 happened there. They basically would go between that and Radio City, so that's how I know Lincoln Center. But I know the '99 ceremony for sure happened in that venue.
Well, there's 3 different buildings, but in Lincoln Center where
Yeah.
they have like different shows. But yeah, there's like a lot of red in there. It's stunning, but highly recommend it. The show travels across the US, so I know it's in like the tri-state area for like the month of April for sort of the end of March through I guess early May or something. But it's really well done. You learn a lot about the Chinese culture. I Googled it before and learned it yesterday. The meaning of Shen Yun, I want to get this right. Shen Yun meaning the beauty of divine beings dancing. That's the meaning of Shen Yun, and it was really great. I did enjoy seeing something different on stage than what we're used to here in New York City. But the fact that they actually originated in New York, this was not like a show that started in China, and they made reference to that, like China would probably not allow a show like this to
Right.
exist.
So
in
speaking
modern
of
day.
shows as well, there's more of a public service announcement than anything.
Okay.
Is that if people are Beatles fans and people are Cirque du Soleil fans,
Okay.
the final months of the Beatles Love show at the Mirage in Las Vegas are taking place now. It's going to end on July 4th. So for anyone who is going to be in Las Vegas who's looking for a show to see, it is the Beatles. It is Cirque du Soleil. They've been doing it for like, I want to say something crazy, like, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. But it's going to end because they're going to build a big ass guitar and change the Mirage to the hard rock. But yeah, I actually like, I kind of have like little to no interest, but at the same time, I'm the kind of person who's like, if something's going to end,
Maybe it's worth checking it out.
yeah,
Yeah.
no regrets. Like that's my motto in life ever since I missed a James Brown concert, thinking, oh yeah, he'll be here next year. Nope, he died.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So here's a question for you, and you too, Kevin. Have either of you seen a Cirque du Soleil before?
I feel like I have, like, way back in like the beginning of Cirque du Soleil when it was, the hot new thing.
Yeah.
But
It
I
started, I
haven't.
believe, in like the 90s, and then it got
Yeah,
really more so. I mean, more productions have popped up globally
yeah.
since like I'd say early 2000s. But go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's it. Like I just
Yeah.
like exact same thing. Like I know that because when they came up, it was just Cirque du Soleil. Like it was just this
There
thing
was
that was
no
cool.
theme.
And now there's
Yeah.
Cirque du Soleil this and Cirque du Soleil that,
Michael
and
Jackson, like
all this
everything.
stuff.
Oh, yeah. I'll be honest with
So,
you. So I've seen a few Cirque du Soleils now, I think like two or three. And the ones that I've seen weren't thematic in the sense of based on a group. It's been more of just a production that captivates a certain culture. So the one that I first saw, I want to say this is in 2019. I think it was called Luzia, and that one was about Mexican culture specifically, and it showed a lot of like what it's like and different aspects to living in Mexico, and obviously through acrobatic forms. They even have like at one point a guy who just uses a soccer ball and he does his own type of tricks and such. They have a lot of contortionists and great tricks jumping on like seesaws and stuff, and they make the costumes are gorgeous, and just the way that they set them up too, usually based on the two or three shows that I've seen for Cirque du Soleil, is like in a circular setting so that you can view all of these tricks, and they'll perform it so that like it revolves on stage, which is really nice. The Luzia show I saw in a tent outside of City Field in Queens where the New York Mets play. And then I saw last year a show, I forgot the name of it. It was an Italian show. It's about an Italian clown who dies. And as he's like going to heaven, there's just images of his life. And it's like a celebration of this clown's life as he's like making his way to heaven. And it's beautiful. But yeah, but when I hear like, oh, and they're making a Cirque du Soleil about the Beatles and Michael Jackson, I'm like, no, like this is just weird. Let's keep it to like these, I don't know, more cultural stories instead of biographical. I think that's just kind of odd. I mean, maybe I'm being biased, but I think it's odd. I also saw one Christmas time. They do it, I think the past like 5 or 6 years at the Hulu Theater in MSG. It's called "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." That's pretty cool. They have a lot of like cheerful. If you're looking for like something to do in New York City and you want more of a performance for Christmas, I mean, you could see the Rockettes, of course, that's a classic. But the "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" has all these cool tricks, and they have a lot of. I mean, the whole point of Cirque du Soleil, it's magical. It's pure magic,
But
and
there was one called Zoomanity. I remember that one was all supposed to be all sexy and topless and shit, and it's real. And that one I just read about. It started in 2003 and then ended March 14th, 2020. So that I just wanted to throw that out there as well. Like Cirque du Soleil has always been like, it's always been like finding some sort of like theme. And my hope is at least with this, like with Michael Jackson and Beatles, it's not so much like telling their story. It's just more like the music is somehow playing a role. Like it's part of the theme. That's all. Like if you're a fan of the music, you can just watch these acrobats do shit to their music, basically, or versions of their music. But we'll see. We'll see if I go. But anyway,
I mean,
I could put Cirque du Soleil in the description of the show. People
Ooh, yeah. The name of the one with the Italian clown is called Cortio, and there's going to be another one coming, I think, in June called Ovo, which I think is about insects, which is interesting. So, yeah, a lot of them like hit upon different cultural groups and just like nationalities throughout the globe. So that's pretty cool. I think there's a New York show like called Mad Apple right now in Vegas, Andrew.
Yeah, I did actually see that in Google.
It's like New York theme. I don't know how that is. I feel like that would be like very edgy, and I'm curious like what the music's like there. But even that, I'm like, no, let's stick to the basics. But I don't know, because when I think of Cirque du Soleil, I mean, there's a lot of like older cultural stories and such, and where you get like an inside look to a culture. But then again, New York, we have our own type of culture here in general. So, but yeah, if you haven't seen a Cirque du Soleil, definitely go see one if it comes to, I mean, they always have traveling shows. I mean, there's of course like 4 or 5 that are stationary in Vegas. I think there's one in Mexico that's stationary at some hotel. I don't know if it's in Cancun, but in a major city there. But everything else, like it eventually makes its way to major cities throughout the U.S. So if you get the chance to see one, definitely go online and see when one's coming. There's one in Disney World right now that I wanted to see, but I didn't get a chance to see it. That one, I'm sure, was spectacular, because when you think of just the magical aspects of Disney coupled with Cirque du Soleil, I'm like, it's just like an explosion of just everything that's amazing that you can put into like one show. So, but yeah, highly recommend if you're into acrobatics, if you're into a circus, but like another level of a circus, because it's not just your traditional like, and well, they don't really use animals anymore, clearly. Well, you would hope not, right? But it doesn't have just someone who's walking a trapeze or someone who's, the center of the rings or anything like that. Like they have stories and they do tricks and such, and it's usually so well done.
Word up.
Cool. All right then. Well, that I guess everything then for this week. We can call it a week. Andrew's hugging himself, so he's ready for 99 times. Yeah, so with that, I'll say thank you to everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. If I get caught up in the audio again, because I don't know why that seems to be so difficult for me, but I'm trying. Really, I promise I'm trying. So yes, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.